Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dexter with Current Connected. On the bench today, we have the Little Rosie from Midnite Solar. These are pretty awesome inverters. I've had the one on the right here, the mobile version, for a few weeks. I've been trying to put it through every bit of abuse I possibly can, and so far I've been completely unsuccessful at hurting it. But we have the new RE version here on the left that has the E panel. So this just came out, and we're going to dive into these inverters and show you everything there is to know about them. Getting started, I want to go over a couple of accessories that can complement both of these inverters. Up here at the top, we have the MNGP2. This is the control panel that you can mount remote from the inverters for programming and configuring all the settings in them. And then on the bottom of this RE version, we have the E panel. And this has various breakers and space for additional breakers. On this E panel, we have a breaker for the battery that we can turn on and off. That is our overcurrent protection for the DC input. And we have a bypass transfer switch. So let's say for some reason you didn't want to use the inverter and you wanted to send power right through to the output. You can flip this into the down position for bypass, up position for running through the inverter. And then we have our input and overcurrent protection for the inverter's AC input. But that is just the basic overview of what's here on the bench. Let's take a look at the connections on the bottom of this inverter. This is the same for both inverters. Here we have the AC input and output connections, a grommet for any sort of communication wires going inside. We have a CAN bus port, battery temperature sensor port, status indicators, and a power switch. We have a ground lug down at the bottom for bonding to, say, like the chassis of an RV. And then our main battery connections where we will connect a 48-volt battery. These terminal covers are really cute. They are shaped like a miniature version of the Rosie inverter. And that's a nice little touch. These terminal covers just snap off and reveal our screws down below. This is a 1/2-inch nut, and these studs fit a 5/16 ring terminal for your battery connections. Around the left side of the inverter, we have our AC wiring compartment, and there are 4 screws that hold this in place. Diving right in, we have our AC terminal block. This is a spring-loaded terminal that we'll get into in just a moment. We then have our auxiliary terminal block here at the bottom, and some dip switches here in the top right corner. Getting started on these terminal blocks here at the bottom, first we have some hardwired CAN bus connections if you had a CAN bus signal that wasn't on an RJ45 connector. We have a connection for the Whiz Bang Jr. battery monitor. There is a pin marked DGND that is not currently used. There are 2 terminals that are marked FP on and FP off. This is for an external power switch. So you'd essentially wire a switch across these 2 terminals. It could be a momentary switch, so you press the button and it turns the inverter on or off, or it can be a toggle switch, and you can select between the type of switch with the dip switch at the top. Moving on, there are 2 sets of auxiliary terminals. These can be configured as inputs or outputs, and when they're being used as an output, they can trigger accessories such as a battery vent fan, diversion loads, or lights. On these terminals, you actually get 12 volts coming out, so that can go straight into a relay that controls the devices you have connected. Moving on to the dip switches at the top, there are only 3 of the 4 actually used. The front panel switch that I already mentioned, and then 2 of them for the CAN bus termination. Moving on to this terminal block, we have 2 ground connections at the top. The next 2 connections are our AC input, and then the last 2 connections are our AC output, so line and neutral. I really like this terminal block, so I have here a piece of 6-gauge wire. And these terminals can easily fit 6-gauge, even though all you really need is 10-gauge. And once they are in there, they really have this bitten down quite well. There's no pulling it out like some of the other spring terminals that I've seen. And if you need to change something, it is incredibly convenient to lever them open, and then you can pull out your wire and do whatever you need to do with them. And if we actually take a look at the wire, there's actually 2 points of contact, and it bit into the wire pretty well. I would have no problem with this in a mobile application because that spring will make sure that there's always tension on the wire and that you never have a loose connection. Now we know they look the same on the outside, but let's pull off the covers and see what makes them different on the inside. There are 3 main boards in this inverter. There is this inverter board here on the top. There is the transfer switch and filtering board on the bottom. And there's another board across the underside, so this makes like a U shape. We can see there is a heat sink down the length of the inverter board, and there's a cooling fan on your left that blows air across this entire inverter. This inverter is engineered and assembled in Arlington, Washington, and I give them a lot of credit for how they built this to be easily assembled. This board on the right comes out pretty easy. There's about 8 screws, 4 on the outside and 4 through the transformer. And what's especially interesting is those 4 screws they put through the transformer are right here at this AC output terminal block. So there's lots of support for those connections that are likely to have any sort of stress and torque on them. And from there, this literally lays down, and I have only 2 connectors, one for the power switch and the 2 wires coming from the other half of the inverter. On this board, we have some very interesting components. The first thing I noticed is this relay right here, which is not present in the RE version. It is replaced just with this jumper wire. The other thing that's really interesting to me is this power supply right here. This power supply can take in 100 to 240 volts AC, and it outputs 48 volts and 0.63 amps. This is what is responsible for dark starting the inverter. So let's say you have lithium batteries and they have become fully depleted. This will provide power to get the inverter going so you can start charging. A lot of competitive inverters to this one will just leave you stranded if there is no 48 volt battery power present, not on this Little Rosie. Taking a look at the rest of this board, we have our transfer switch relay here, a couple of Hall effect sensors for measuring AC current, and a couple of inductors and some capacitors for cleaning up the AC output power. Power is delivered to this board from these blue and white wires that comes from the inverter board, and these can be removed with one of those spring terminals just like the AC output terminal block. The inverter board on the other side is similarly screwed in and unplugs and comes out of the inverter just like that, and that leaves us with just the control board in the center. I've taken some time to analyze this inverter board, and there's actually a lot of really cool stuff going on. A lot of criticism goes to high frequency inverters because they don't rely on a transformer like low frequency inverters. But that's not the entire truth. This right here is a transformer, and it does operate at a high frequency, but the reason it operates at a high frequency is because you can get a lot more power through the same transformer at a higher frequency versus what you can at a low frequency. So it's still using this transformer to step up from 48 volts to about 300 volts. So essentially what's going on is right in here we have 3 sets of H bridges. These are all in parallel and providing power onto these bus bars that are soldered to the board. And these 2 screws are where that power then enters the transformer. And that connects to these bus bars here on the back. These are actually the foil windings inside of that transformer. And then you can see that the secondary winding is around the outside. So this is where the 48 volts that has been chopped up into AC enters this transformer at a very high frequency, and then it exits this transformer on these thinner wires, which from those wires it goes back onto the board and is turned back into DC power before this other half of the board turns it into our actual 60 hertz AC. So essentially, to break all this down, we take in 48 volts over here, we chop it up into high frequency AC, send it out of these 2 terminals into the transformer, out of the transformer, back into DC where we filter it with these capacitors, into another set of an inverter that turns it into our 60 hertz AC, which then is sent out the white and blue wires that went to that other board, and that is where we filter it and provide it to our loads. Taking a look at one of these brackets, we now can see our actual FETs here that are doing the switching. There are 2 things to note. The first thing is you may see some shine all over this whole thing. That is a conformal coating, so that way moisture does not affect this board or corrode anything. And it's actually a very hard coating. This is, I'm pretty sure, set with UV light, so it's very similar to the material when you're getting a filling at the dentist where they're using that UV to set it. Now, I can't get a very good view on these chips, but from what I know about this inverter, these are silicon carbide chips. And that is a very, very specific material that is much more efficient, and it can switch at higher frequencies without the heat loss in the process. And that's what allows this inverter to reach really high efficiencies that we'll test in a later video. But this is not just your normal off-the-shelf, cheapest thing they can get. These are actually really expensive and high-quality parts doing the switching here. We're set up now for our idle consumption testing. We have our meters up here measuring amps DC and volts DC. And then down here we've got the mobile version on the right and the RE version on the left. I'll be able to clip my leads onto each inverter and provide some power coming from my power supply on these wires up here. And that's how we'll do our idle testing. We're going to test these at 48 volts and 56 volts. And the reason is because 48 volts represents a nearly empty battery, and 56 volts represents a fully charged battery. We're connected now to the mobile version. We're dialed into 48 volts, and we have about 330 milliamps of draw from this inverter. So that is about 15 to 16 watts. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the RE version. And with this one, the current went up to about 340 milliamps. So this is a little bit over 16 watts, slightly higher idle consumption. Let's go ahead and dial this up to 56 volts now. And at 56 volts, we're still about 340 milliamps here on the RE version. So these are just about identical. On a full battery, we're about 19 watts, and that is still below the 22 watt idle consumption spec'd in the manual. Okay, we've confirmed the idle consumption of these inverters. Now let's test the Rosie's claim to fame, its surge capacity. This one here on the top is the one we took apart, and it is connected right now to my test equipment. We're essentially running it at full load. So I have these wires coming out with hot and neutral. Our hot wire is running up here to the shunt, plugged into my multimeters, so we're measuring how many amps AC off that shunt. This is a 100 amp, 100 millivolt shunt that then feeds to here. And this is where I make a split. This wire is going to the variac, which is allowing me to dial in the exact load on this inverter, and we're sending the power from the variac to this heater back here, and I'm running the fan off of this transformer up here. And then this other wire on here is going to a power outlet. And on the other side of this power outlet, I have my favorite bounce house blowers. These blowers are the best way I can represent inductive loads you may have at home, such as air conditioners and well pumps. So for our testing, we're going to leave this heater running, keeping the inverter at full load, and we're going to try to power up this fan in addition to the inverter already being at full load. Let's give it a try. All right, here we go. Full load test, adding the bounce house blower in 3, 2, 1. Whoa, that was 70 amps. Okay, so what essentially just happened? The inverter did go into overload protection. We were getting over 71 amps out of it though. That was incredible. So essentially what happened is this blower is about 10 to 11 amps when it's running. So we were at 41 amps, which is well past the 30 amps or 3,600 watts this inverter can provide. That's pretty impressive. We were running at full load on the inverter for probably 5 to 10 minutes getting this set up. So I'm really impressed with what this can do. Let's do it like 3 more times to see if we can break it. All right, so you're at full load over there. And I'm trying to turn the fan on. He's trying to get the shot of it going into an error mode, but let's see. Well, I guess it most of the time is able to...
it never tripped.
It didn't trip. We're trying to get the video of it tripping, but it never tripped. So we'll keep trying. It trips sometimes, but other times it's able to start it up. You ready? Now I'm going to turn on the fan. Of course, when you're trying to record the error light, it doesn't want to go into an error mode, and it handles it just fine. That's pretty impressive for a 3,600 watt inverter to start a big old inductive load, even while it's already at full load. And you ready? Mm-hmm. Here we go. Pretty crazy. We switched our wires from the mobile version to the RE version. This one has a slightly higher capacity of 4,500 watts. We'll see if it has similar surge capability. Now this RE version is capable of 4,500 watts, which is 37.5 amps. So anything above 37.5 amps is already exceeding the rating of this inverter and essentially a bonus. So we're gonna do the same test. We're gonna set the variac so that we're drawing 37.5 amps going to our heating element, and we'll try starting the bounce house blower again. You've got eyes on the meter up here. You can see we're drawing 20 amps. I haven't dialed it in yet. We'll go ahead and turn that up to 37.5 amps. All right, there we go, about 37.5 amps. And now, the moment of truth. We're gonna turn on the bounce house blower and see if this one can handle it. I saw 76 amps on the meter. I'm gonna do this a few more times and see what the max we can get out of it is. That'll be cool. I'm sure the audio on that was awful. Every single one of these startups has been perfect. So at this point, I'm going to turn the variac up all the way so that we're hitting it with the worst we possibly can. And now if we turn on the blower, let's see what we get. We just got 80 amps. We just got 80 amps out of that thing. That is like higher than the mobile one has done yet. I haven't been able to overload the RE version yet. Luckily, there's been an additional blower. I didn't even know they stacked that perfect. All right, here is the 2-blower inductive load test on the Midnite RE. The heater is not running. We're gonna just see if it can start the fans, and then from there we'll bring the heat. In 3, 2, 1. I wasn't even watching the meter to see how much we overloaded it. We're gonna have to do it again. 3, 2, 1. I saw 83 amps. No way. That's awesome. All right, let's add some heat. This will be fun. Let's bring it up to let's do 10 amps just to be nice to it. 12 sounds fine. All right, you ready? 90 amps. That was 90 amps. No way. All right. Here we are. We've got 20 amps going to heat. Now we're going to plug in the bounce house blowers. Let's see if I'm thinking this is going to be the one that does it. Let's see. I just saw 98 amps when it shut off. So, okay, yes, that was too much for it. But 98 amps out of an inverter that can only output 37.5 amps nameplate. That's pretty incredible. My camera guy told me I needed to chill out a little bit, so I took him a little too literally. What this inverter was capable of is absolutely amazing. If we have a well pump or any sort of air conditioner or load like that, these inverters are going to have no problem doing it. I've never seen an inverter surge just as much as these ones did. I feel chilled and refreshed now. And my finishing remarks on the Rosie, this RE version is absolutely incredible. The mobile version, we've tested this at incredibly hot temperatures. It handled it just fine. I would have no hesitation installing one of these in my rig, and that's saying a lot because I get to see all the things that go wrong with some of these products, and I have no doubt these Midnite inverters are going to handle anything I can throw at them because I've literally thrown just about everything I can at them. Other than that, guys, we really appreciate you sticking it through to the end. This has been really fun to test these inverters and show you what they can do. We'll put links to the products in the description down below. Other than that, if you want to see more fun videos like this, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.